from the perspective of I need to increase my pain level to exceed the pleasure that I'm getting from these bad habits that I had. And most of it was eating sugar, drinking too much alcohol, stuff like that. I would associate so much pain with that. If I was going to take a bite out of a donut, this is just a bite of a donut. But it's not. It is the breakdown of your ethos. It's the breakdown of who you are. And if you take a habit that you want to break and you direct the net effect of what you're doing to it, it's going to elicit a pain reaction.
Welcome to the Superhuman Life. I'm your host, Frank Rich, and this is the only podcast in the world dedicated to helping men break free from the shackles of addiction through the power of faith and fitness. It is our goal with every episode to help you take back control and rebuild your body, mind, and spirit. And we do so by bringing you real and raw conversations with people just like you, aiming to find their place in this world while dealing with the everyday struggles and battles that we all face. Now, it is my belief that we were all created for a specific purpose. And if we can harness that belief or faith, then take control of our mind and body or fitness, then we can ultimately create the life that we've always dreamed about, our own superhuman life. I want to let you know how grateful and blessed I am to have you here with me today. Let's get on to today's show. What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another amazing, very exciting episode of the Superhuman Life. Guys, as always, I'm your host, Frank Rich, and before we get into today's conversation, let me just remind you how incredibly grateful we are to have you here with us. Guys, you know, it's really hard to believe we're already at the beginning of August 2021. What an incredible year it's been. What a remarkable 2 years it's been. A little over 2 years. You know, we started this podcast back in July of 2019. So we're coming into our third year, and guys, we're just getting better and better with every single week. So we are so appreciative for every single one of you guys that are out there that are supporting this show. Now, if you're looking to help us continue to grow and get this message out in front of more people, guys, you can help us in these two ways. First off, if you're watching us on YouTube, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn those notifications on so you're notified every single Monday when our new episodes drop. For those of you guys that are out there on the audio side of things, if you haven't done so yet and you're getting value out of these conversations, make sure to leave us that 5-star rating or a written review, whether you're listening there on Apple, Spotify, Google, Podbean, any of the platforms, wherever you guys are tuning in. Those reviews and ratings, they mean so much to us and so much to the algorithm. Now, before I get into introing our guest today, let me remind you of our sponsor here at the Superhuman Life. Today's sponsor and the sponsor for the last couple of weeks, we've been telling you guys about them. We're so incredibly grateful to have them on board with us, is Covenant Eyes. We love Covenant Eyes here at the Superhuman Life, and we recommend them all the time through the podcast and through the work that we're doing over at Rebuild Recoveries. Now, Covenant Eyes has been helping people overcome pornography for over 21 years now with their world-class accountability software and insightful educational resources. They understand that people find freedom through supportive and authentic relationships. Now, Covenant Eyes has been around long enough to know that porn affects everyone. Men, women, children. It doesn't matter who you are and where you are. Everyone. Now, if you're struggling with porn, we have a message for you here at the Superhuman Life and Covenant Eyes. We want to let you know that you are not alone and we are here to help. And because of that, Covenant Eyes has a special offer for all of our listeners here at the Superhuman Life. We want to give you a free 30-day trial of Covenant Eyes by using the promo code Superhuman at checkout. Guys, all you need to do is visit Covenant Eyes over at www.covenanteyes.com or visit the link down in the description box below and enter in that promo code, one word, Superhuman, for your first free month trial of their software. Guys, check them out if you're struggling. This is the software. This is the tool. This is the device. This is the supplement to your reboot plan. This is the supplement to whatever approach. If you're in a small group, if you're working with a coach, if you're working with a therapist, get yourself some accountability software to add in that added layer to help you shift out of this struggle that you're facing and ultimately step into life that we all know that you were created to live. Now let's get on to today's guest, guys. Part CEO, part personal development wonk, part biohacker, info geek. Thom King is a self-confessed serial entrepreneur. While his favorite book list contains many success-oriented and personal development classics, the traditional definition of achieving success, i.e. make a lot of money, is not what inspires or motivates Thom. He follows more of a you aren't doing well unless you're also doing some good line of thinking. Guys, that's very, very similar to the message that we're sharing here at the show. Now, King's company has been built around the simple principle of do the right thing. Back in 1999, Thom's personal passion for food and his concern over the explosion of metabolic disease led him to found Steviva Brands, now known as Icon Foods, with a mission to stem the tide of diabesity by providing consumers healthy alternative to sugar. In recent years, his passion for food and optimal health have intersected with his embrace of a ketogenic, low-carb, high-fat diet. Thom's latest project is a line of ketogenic complements intended to help more people successfully adopt a healthier lifestyle. Guys, I got a chance to try out some of this condiments. He sent me a full package of what he's created with the Guy Gone Keto brand. He also shipped me his book, and we unpack a lot about, you know, the origin of Steviva Brands, how he got into the food industry, when he had this kind of awakening moment while at a conference and realizing that he was living kind of two different lifestyles. Once again, it seems very true and very similar to the message that started this show. We get into, obviously, the ketogenic lifestyle. We get into the dangers of some of these other condiments. Why do we need to pay attention to not just our food, but what we're putting on our food? Okay, we talk about some biohacks and we get in and touch on longevity as well, which is something that I'm really fascinated by. So this is a very powerful conversation, very insightful, so many takeaways. So grab a pen, grab a paper, guys, and get ready for today's conversation. But without further ado, guys, let's get into the conversation. Adopting a ketogenic lifestyle with the Guy Gone Keto, Thom King. Hope you guys enjoy. Thom King, the Guy Gone Keto. Welcome to the Superhuman Life.
Thank you, Frank. I appreciate it. Super stoked to be on your podcast and ready to dig right in.
Yeah, I'm really excited to kind of dive into your story. You know, your two companies. I believe that they're separate, but some of the work you've been doing with Icon for over 30 years now. I think you founded the company in 1990. And then just kind of unpacking your story, like, you know, who was the guy before he went keto? What was kind of the transitioning to, you know, for you to kind of make that life change? And yeah, just really excited to kind of unpack your story, your life, and everything. So, yeah, I mean, you know, 30 years in the food industry, you know, I think that's really a good place to start, is kind of what got you into there with Steviva Brands, I believe is what it was back in the original time. And it's now obviously evolved into Icon. So yeah, if you don't mind, Thom, maybe kind of tell us a little bit about the story about what got you into food, and kind of how you started this whole Steviva back in the 90s.
Well, one sort of followed the other. So I was living in Phoenix, Arizona at the time, and working for a radio station selling ad time. And I ran into a gentleman in Phoenix, Arizona, who had just come back from Paraguay. And his thing was going out, finding different types of herbal remedies and, you know, and plant sources from the jungle and rainforest. And so he basically, you know, was showing me all of these things that he brought back, and he had this jar of green paste, and he's like, you should try this. So I tried it, and it was intensely sweet, probably 25 times sweeter than sugar, but it had like a real pronounced sort of herbal, you know, flavor to it. And I asked him, I'm like, what is this? Is this some sort of a sugary, you know, like tonic or something? And he said, no, this is just stevia leaves. It doesn't have any sugar, doesn't have any carbohydrates, doesn't affect blood sugar. And at that point, it was just like, that was like taking the red pill and going down the rabbit hole. Like, I was like, how does this happen? Like, how can things in nature taste sweet, but not contain sugar? You know, because I think we're all sort of brainwashed that, well, the only thing that's sweet on the face of the planet is sugar. And that's completely untrue. So that sort of got me started and took me down, you know, the path of okay, so what am I going to do with this? And I maintained a day job, you know, for almost 10 years, trying to, you know, find a natural sort of water extraction process that would unlock those sweet constituents that was in that leaf. And my goal was to build a consumer brand, you know, and eventually take that consumer brand equity and put it into an ingredient company. And that's what happened. And it just took like a lot longer because there was so many, mountains to go through and over. So, and
Yeah,
most of
welcome
it
to
was
the
like,
world of entrepreneurship, right?
yeah, and it was like a lot of it was like FDA, finding the right people to surround myself with, and then just spending all my cash and having to borrow and have my day job support my night job. So it was, it was a labor of love for sure. And in 2008, finally the FDA cleared the way for stevia to be used as an ingredient in food. And that's when our business really started taking off.
Got it. So you kind of had this initial exchange with it, like with this gentleman, like in the 90s, late 80s, 90s, and then like as you were talking, like I kind of remember when stevia kind of came on the scene. So for me as a bodybuilder, like we were obviously like as I was getting into training and in my first early preps around 2006, 2007, it's like at that point, it's like I was really paying attention to labels, making sure I wasn't eating anything that had sugar. At that time, I was still using, Sweet and Lows or Splenda. And then, yeah, it would have been, probably a couple years just after. So it was like the first 20 years of you guys really of research development until you kind of went live with products, or what were you guys focused on from 1990 to 2008?
Well, I mean, so it was really in probably 1995 when I met this gentleman, Jim May, and I didn't really launch the company until 1999. So that period from 1999 until 2008, we still, we had to find a chemist who could come up with a process to be able to use just hot water to be able to release the intense sweetener that are in the leaves, and then at that point we had to find a factory, right, that could do it for us, because we didn't have the money to build a factory. We had to just hire it out, and so that took a long time, and it also took a lot of capital because you'd have to buy so much. And that was part of it. That was part of, I guess, the struggle. And then when we finally had the money to be able to import it, it got hung up in customs for about 8 months, because they were like, hey, this isn't approved. You don't have these papers. And the FDA got involved, and it got pretty sticky. And I got an attorney that basically capitulated to all the things that the FDA wanted. But that first import of ours was a real struggle. And at that point, we'd only sell stevia in stores that under like a supplement. We couldn't sell it as like a food.
Got it. Okay. Here's maybe a good time to maybe define, like, I don't know if define's the right word, but let's maybe explain to the audience like what stevia is, or what this leaf extract is, and what makes it different from the other artificial sweeteners. Because like I was sharing, for the long time I was using Splenda or any of these other things, and then like I kind of know where that goes. But yeah, just kind of so the audience kind of knows like why are we actually focused on this conversation today.
Yeah, so the stevia leaf contains these molecules called glycosides, and there's a lot of glycosides in nature. Like if you pick up say you take a blade of grass and you chew on the bottom of the blade of grass, it's like, hey, you know what? That's slightly sweet. Those are glycosides. So glycosides exist in nature. They exist in higher concentrations in the stevia leaf, and they even exist in higher concentrations in monk fruit. So monk fruit's another high intensity sweetener. So the way that a glycoside works is it isn't really metabolized, in your gut or liver or anything else. It's just has a sweet technical effect. So when you taste it, it's sweet. And that's pretty much the end of it. Like it doesn't have any calories, it doesn't have any carbs. It just simply passes through your system sort of inertly. But if you want to compare them to, like, let's say Splenda, which the component in Splenda is called sucralose, which is about 700 times sweeter than sugar. If you want to compare it to aspartame, I mean, aspartame is a phenylalanine based sweetener. It's a modified amino acid. So these are all like heavy duty chemicals. Particularly with sucralose, which is the main component in Splenda, it's a chlorinated sugar molecule. So what happens when you take it in, right? When you eat it, your body doesn't recognize it because it doesn't exist in nature. So your body doesn't recognize it. So the first thing that it says is like, oh, I think that this is sugar, so we're going to trigger an insulin response. So when you have these chemically based, artificial sweeteners, you get the benefit of calorie abatement. So you're not taking those calories in, but you still get a bit of an insulin response. So it's going to just slightly elevate your blood sugar levels because your body's acting out as though it were, sugar. The difference is with glycosides, which exist in nature. If you have stevia, you have monk fruit, which are based in glycosides, your body recognizes it, right? Because it exists in nature. And it's like, oh, we know what this is. It's a glycoside. It's going to taste sweet. We don't need to have any type of a glycemic reaction to it. Blood sugar levels stay the same. We just ignore it. So that's the main difference. So if you drink like a Diet Coke, right? And you take your blood sugar maybe an hour later, you're going to see a spike. Not a huge spike, not like you ate a candy bar, but you're definitely going to see a spike. And so managing, like, you as a bodybuilder, when you're looking to get ripped and you're trying to lose fat, I mean, you're always going to be looking at your blood glucose levels, right? And your insulin levels. It's the best way of tracking it. And so introducing things to your body that don't trigger an insulin response is a much more effective way to lose weight, or even get yourself into keto. So that would be the big difference.
Yeah, it's crazy, because I was dating a girl. It's 8, 9, almost 10 years ago now, and she was a competitor as well. And she looked amazing year round. But we'll always have conversations. Have you tried keto? Have you done this? We're just kind of going back and forth. And she would tell me anytime she tried keto, even something as small as like chewing a piece of sugar-free gum because it had that sucralose or the aspartame. I'm not sure which one is in the gum. Even that, just that, one or two pieces like would be enough of an elevator. It would kick her out of ketosis. And back then I was like, there's no way. And I was, I understand it enough now. But like, so, obviously if somebody is trying weight loss, if their goal is fat loss or, body composition optimization or whatever, you see it all the time. It's like I'm cutting, I'm focused on the whole foods, but then I take, the salad dressing, or, I cut out the regular soda, but I drink a half gallon or, 2 liter of diet soda every day. And then they can't figure out like, why am I not losing weight? It's because these things are elevating your blood sugar. It's not so much the calories, it's the glucose. Is that correct?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, your body only needs 4 tablespoons of glucose to function. So it's like when you start weighing it out, how much glucose you're getting, like if you drink, if you're drinking like a large diet soda, it's, you're just overloading your body. But I would say glucose is something definitely that elevates your blood sugar levels. But I would say the real component of sugar, because sugar is actually 2 sugars. So table sugar is half glucose, half fructose. And so the glucose is the molecule is broken apart in your stomach. You digest you're digesting the glucose immediately, in the large intestine and the stomach. So it goes right into your system. The fructose gets metabolized by your liver, which is kind of interesting. So some people think, yeah, well, fructose will give you energy, but fructose never gets converted to energy. Fructose gets converted over to lipids or fat. And so which is just, I mean, this is for me profoundly interesting. And when I had it presented to me, it's like, this makes total sense. So what happens is when you take in, well, let's think of a bear when a bear hibernates, right? So it's in late fall, like apples and and pears and all sorts of the fruit that has grown has fallen onto the ground. And when fruit gets rotten like that is when it has its highest amount of fructose. And so the bears just chow on that. Like, they'll eat tons of rotten fruit. They'll eat anything that's got high amounts of fructose, and it instantly blows them up. Like, they just get fat. And it's purely because their livers are converting that fructose into body fat. And the same thing happens with human beings. Like, if people think that having a tall glass of orange juice is like, yeah, this is good for me, it's orange juice, you're literally taking in a massive overdose of fructose, which most of it is going to be metabolized by your liver and turned into fat. So it's like those sugars, any kind of like processed sugars, and I mean, I look at fruit as nature's candy, right? It's like, if you want, instead of a candy bar, if you have like a few cherries, any kind of berries or something like that, I mean, it's a way better snack. But if you're overloading on fruit, I mean, that can also like lead to metabolic disease, and it can also throw you out of keto super quickly.
Yeah, wow. I mean, I agree 100% here with the nature's candy. We had a psychologist on a few episodes back, and his whole his kind of business and mission now is around helping people with food addiction and never binging again. And it's like, he's obviously like, he has to overcome some chocolate addictions and whatnot. But he's like, when you get past all that stuff and then you do bite into, the first piece of fruit after kind of clearing the palate, it's like, it tastes, how it's naturally supposed to taste. So, this is great. So kind of, early 2000s, you kind of get everything rolling. And I mean, this is obviously great for keto, but the initial intent behind it wasn't for ketogenic purposes, if I'm correct, right?
It was way before keto. And so, and sort of the way that I got into keto was a little different. So like our company was selling, sweeteners to sports nutrition companies. So, companies like Quest and, other protein bar companies and stuff, that were targeting, they were sort of in that keto category, but they were more sort of like high fat, low sugar, high protein. So, I mean, and Atkins. And so, yeah, I saw an opportunity, and I had a sugar habit that we haven't really talked about yet. But yeah, when I was younger, I mean, I had the worst sugar addiction that you could ever imagine. Like, I would take literally a can of Pepsi and empty a bag of M&Ms into it because it wasn't quite sweet enough. And I would do this like 2 or 3 times a day. And, what happened is it screwed up my metabolism. So by the time I got into my 30s, I had this thing that I call yo-yo weight, right? So I would be skinny fat for a while. I'd hit the gym. I would practice Atkins, and then I would lose that weight. But then I'd go back to I would go back to my regular lifestyle. But what happens is when you do that yo-yo weight thing, and you're using diet and not lifestyle change, is that you keep getting fatter. Right? So you'll lose your pounds, but you're going to gain a little bit more. You'll lose your pounds, you're going to gain a little bit more. So, it got to the point to where I think I just sort of bottomed out. So, I mean, I was carrying about 35 pounds of extra weight, which on my frame is not a huge deal. I'm 6'2", so I could hide it well under the clothes, but the clothes come off and it's like, wow, dumpster fire. But so I was in Las Vegas, and I went out to dinner with one of our suppliers, and just like kind of overdid it on food. Like, I had one of these massive ribeyes. We had cake and baked potato and wine, and I mean, it was just like this dinner where I was just stuffed. And I went back up to my room in Vegas, and it was just like, what am I doing? It's like I'm working in this industry. I felt like crap. And, I looked in the mirror, and that's when I was like, you know, it, I'm an imposter. I have this like massive sort of imposter syndrome going on right now, because I'm telling everybody, in the food industry, you need to get rid of the sugar, and you need to to do this. But I was having pizza, and I was having French fries, and I was drinking wine and beer, and so I was not I was not walking my talk, if you will. And at that point, I was like, okay, I think that the pain of what I was doing exceeded the pleasure that I was deriving from, eating crappy food, and, and consuming sugar, and just not really committing myself to a healthy lifestyle. And so, I mean, I've always journaled, and I always found that journaling is a great way for me to, is to sort out the things that are inside of my head, and kind of set my intentions of where, what kind of outcomes I want in my life. And it sort of sets the stage for, creating a daily masterpiece, if you will. And I just busted out my journal, and it's just like, I'm changing my life. You know what? Diets don't work. Lifestyle changes do work. And I'm changing my lifestyle. And that's when I just started making a deep dive into keto, studying everything that I possibly could about keto, going to conferences, mingling with the right people. And it's just, I kept taking these notes, I kept journaling. And after a year, I basically had a book on how to make a lifestyle change and how to adopt a ketogenic lifestyle. And it got published. To my shock, I was like, well, these are a bunch of notes. I mean, maybe there's a book here. And then the publisher's like, oh my God, keto's blowing up right now. And yeah, and I had a book, and then the book did really well. And I was even more shocked by that. Like, people would come up to me and be like, oh, could you autograph this book? And I'm like, what? You want me to autograph this? And it's like, well, you wrote it. So it was this sort of this shock of like, okay, so what I did made a positive impact, not only on my life, but the life of others that I shared it with, which was it really satisfying. And ultimately, it's still always always a learning situation and a path for growth, because I still screw it up all the time, right? Because the pandemic hit. I can't go to the gym. You're stuck in your house. The stress of all that, mania. And, I found myself slipping off of keto again. So I put on what I like to call the COVID-19. So I am actually very much working on a reset. Like, okay, so here's my second journey into, breaking bad habits and getting into, getting back into ketogenic lifestyle.
Yeah, no, this is an important, important part right here for, for the listeners in the audience to hear. We've had, we're 85, 86 episodes up to this point now. And, I can't tell you how many dozens of these interviews we've had where we have experts on. We've had people that have transformed their lives using a specific approach or specific tool or specific method. But just because you've done it once doesn't mean that, you're always going to get it right. So I appreciate you kind of sharing, the realness here. It's like, here, you're a published author, amazing book, 7-figure business, helping people. And it's like, no, you're still like, you still have to make sure that you are practicing the right things. We can easily always fall back. I want to spend some time here, if you don't mind, kind of on this point in your journey and in your life, because I think there's a lot that we can really unpack with kind of this point where you kind of had the moment where you looked at yourself and you're like, you're an imposter. And, I was sharing with you before we recorded kind of, the work that I'm doing and how we're servicing and helping men with rebuilt recovery. But I had a very similar, experience in my life. So I was building a fitness company. I was an online public figure, I guess, in a lot of my content, even as a bodybuilder and fitness guy, was more centered around, the personal growth, like use fitness as a tool to transform your life, but like it's actually more about who you're becoming. So I'm putting this positive message out into the world, like become the best version of yourself, kind of always, sharing mindset and psychology things. And then I had this point around late 2018 where like I had the moment where I looked at myself in the mirror and it's like, Frank, you're an absolute fraud. You're telling the world that they need to go become the best version of themselves. And you're secretly keeping this addiction that you've had for 20 years to yourself. Like, either A, stop putting the message out in the world, or take care of yourself first and then use that as the gateway to help people. And obviously, the rest has kind of been history here with, Superhuman Life and, starting a whole new company. And I mean, the impact we're having is amazing. So I'm curious with you kind of, how you kind of, A, what was that dialogue at the beginning, kind of internally back and forth, those conversations within your own head, but how did you, at the beginning, because it can be very difficult to keep consistently because the old way is so much easier. So how did you at first really, stay consistent with the changes here? So A, what was that kind of dialogue like? How are you speaking to yourself, and maybe there's something we could pass on to the audience there. And because I'm a big guy on alignment and integrity, and I think integrity is when your words match up your action is kind of what we're saying here. So yeah, just kind of what was that those first initial months like for you with making this transition?
Well, thanks for that, Frank, and that's like and that candor. Thank you for that candor. And that honesty. Well, yeah. So the dialogue, right? So that internal dialogue, that's constantly shifting. So, I mean, getting control of one's internal dialogue, I think, is a lifelong journey. So I'm not sure that there's a destination of like, yeah, the committee that lives inside of my head that's telling me, I'm a fraud and I'm a screw up, I'm never going to do it, you're never going to get it done. I mean, I think every person has that committee, right? And if they say they don't, then I think that they need to take a deeper look, because I mean, as human beings, we're all beautifully flawed, if you will. And that is part of our journey. So the dialogue in the beginning was pretty hard. Like it was pretty hard. Like there was a lot of self-loathing, right? And because I was coming from the perspective of I need to increase my pain level to exceed the pleasure that I'm getting from these, from the bad habits that I had. And most of it was eating sugar and, drinking too much alcohol and eating carbs and stuff like that. And so I would associate so much pain with that. It's like if I was going to take a bite out of a donut, I'm like, this is just a bite of a donut. But it's not. It is it's the breakdown of your ethos. It's the breakdown of your values. It's the breakdown of who you are. And if you really take a habit that you want to break and you direct really the net effect of what you're doing to it, it's going to elicit a pain reaction. Like you're going to be like, oh, yeah, is this donut really worth eating if these are all of the things that are coming up, right? So it was a pain. It was leveraging pain as a way to change. But I'm not advocating suffering, right? Because suffering is something different than pain, right? Suffering is where you continue to loathe yourself, where you refuse any type of self-acceptance, right? And I think that self-acceptance is key, Like one of the things that, and this might resonate with you, like I practiced Stoicism. I've practiced Stoicism for the past 5 years, and it's a practice that has really, really helped me ground myself. But one of the things that came up in my practice is a passage out of the Daily Stoic by Ryan Holiday, was on the Serenity Prayer, right? And it really peeled away the layers of the Serenity Prayer. And I think that the Serenity Prayer, if you deal with addiction, it's certainly an amazing way to help you. Even if you don't, just as a human being, it's a way to become very, very grounded. It's, it's asking for the clarity and the serenity and the peace of mind to accept the things that you can't change. And there's things you can't change. You can't change time. You can't change aging process. It's going to happen. You can't change loss. Things are going to get lost. You can't change the fact that you're going to die someday. That is a fact. Every single one of us is going to die. These are things that you can't change. So why worry about that, right? Why worry about what other people think? Because you can't change it. But what I like to focus on is the things that you can change, right? You can change your mindset. You can change your behavior. You can change your habits. You can change how you spend your time. And the biggest one for me is with whom you spend your time with, right? Because you are the sum of the 5 people closest to you, right? And it's like if you surround yourself with good people and you surround yourself with people that are going to support you in your healing process or your process of growth, that's powerful stuff. And so this was my dialogue, and this is what helped me shift what was a diet over to a lifestyle change. And it's something that I continue to practice every day. Like I continue to practice self-acceptance. Like I'm going to screw up. I'm going to eat something I'm not supposed to eat. I'm going to go off the wagon. I'm going to miss a workout, and the things, I can reflect on that and how am I going to do better each and every day. But it's all part of a self-acceptance process that we accept that we're flawed, but we can do better. And if we focus on doing better and we have the courage and the determination and the self-discipline to do better, then every day we get just a little bit better.
Yeah, that was beautiful. Who were some of those people for you? Were you subscribed to people that you were following online and you had more virtual kind of mentors leading you, or did you have actually people like in your life that were these influences for you? Just curious.
It was a mix, one thing that really came up for me is like my grandfather, like really before I started getting into stoicism and stuff, I was convinced that my grandfather was a monk, right? Because his intention would always be on what he was doing, like if my grandfather was making the salad, he was the embodiment of making the salad. And he was so present and he was such a good man. His integrity was better than any person that I've ever met. And he, and he was humble. He was very humble. And then later, when I really started getting into stoicism, it came to me that, oh, he wasn't a monk. No, he was a stoic. And it was like, so I would have to say that, yeah, it's my tribe of mentors, if you will, like my grandfather, some of them I would say, yeah, are definitely virtual. Lewis Howes, love that man. Tony Robbins, a lot of people that I just associate in doing business, like a friend of mine, Ron Penna, who founded Quest Nutrition. I'm always inspired by him. So it's a combination of people that, virtual, if you will, and then also people that I know. But it's also a process of being able to recognize when somebody shouldn't be in your life as well, like toxic people, like if there's people that gaslight you, or there's people that don't support you in what you're trying to build, right? Because if somebody doesn't support you in what you're trying to build, then they're only supporting the tearing down of what you're doing. So I think it's very important to, to be able to assess your relationships, like, is this person, is my best interest, you know, in this person's forefront, or is this person looking to get something from me? And particularly when you reach a certain level of success, or, you write a book, you know, people will come to you, and it becomes harder and harder to tell who's kissing your butt and who authentically likes you and, and looks out for your best interest. And I think that's just part of I think that's just part of the human journey, of being able to have these connections and recognize when a connection is good for you and when a connection's not, and being able to say no, like, hey, I really appreciate the time that we've spent together, and, I'm not sure that this is a good fit. And I'm not talking about just like, personal relationships like that, but relationships that, that don't support you in being your better self.
Yeah. So that's a great, another great area to kind of zoom in on here a little bit. So for you, like in your life, and I'm sure you've had, many more years of this than I have. I'm in a similar, I'm going through a season of my life right now where it's looking at relationships, looking at the people. Are they serving me? Am I serving them? Are they actually, bringing me value and joy and making me improve? And are they supporting the things that I'm doing? One thing, Jordan Peterson is a huge influence on my life. And, he's got something where awesome. He says, be very careful who you share good news with, and also be very careful who you share bad news with. And I think it's, it's very, ringing true to what you're sharing. It's funny you said Lewis Howes as well. I don't think you and I would be speaking today if it were not for Lewis. So he was the first podcast that I stumbled across back in 2015. And then when I got a chance to meet him at the first Summit of Greatness, I said, one day I'm going to have you and I'll be interviewing you. So we haven't gotten him yet, but Lewis, if you ever hear this, the invitation is always
I see
open.
It in your future.
So for you, when you're going through these kind of, auditing relationships and stuff like that, what's that conversation like? With the individual? Like, I mean, do you flat out tell them like, hey, I love you, but it doesn't have to be like an intimate relationship. I'm not speaking so much about that, but it could be a business. It could just be, a colleague or somebody you used to enjoy going to the gym with, but you no longer enjoy, them hitting on every chick or talking about he's cheating on his wife or whatever the case may be. So do you actually like go tell them, or you just kind of let it kind of naturally kind of separate? Like, what does that look like for you?
That depends, right? It depends, like, because I think that it takes a lot more courage to address closure, in a relationship. And to me, it's like, if you have that courage to be able to create that closure, and to create that the closure in an amicable, loving fashion, it's hugely empowering, right? Because if a lot of times people just let things fade, right? Like, oh, we'll just let this fade out. And it's like, oh, I won't return his text. And then that bridge will grow, But the thing is it's still attached to you, right? I mean, you're still carrying that around, and maybe not as much, but you still carry it around. And really the courageous, more powerful thing, and really, the most loving thing is to be able just to express your feelings, right? Express your feelings and speak your truth, speak your truth to power. And a lot of times that just means being honest. Like, hey, we've hung out and we've been friends for a while, or colleagues for a while. And, I just want to give this a break and, hit the pause button because there's some things that aren't working for me. And it's on the other person if they're going to take that personally or not, right? Because you can't control that. You only control the things that you take personally. And the worst case scenario out of it is, he tells you to piss off and I'll never speak to you again. That's fine, and that's his choice. Or it might open up a dialogue of, oh, I'm not showing up as the best person that I possibly can. And how can I do that? And then, I mean, it can literally save the relationship, because then you could, you can bring up the things that don't work for you. Like, hey, like we're in the gym, I love working out with you, but when you talk about other women, you talk about cheating on your wife and, you're hitting on other women and stuff like that. I don't understand where that's coming from. And, it doesn't work for me. And maybe it would be that person's opportunity to say, oh yeah, it's, you know what? I have some like deep-seated insecurities that I feel through the approval of others. I kind of doubt that's where it would go, but it does create a space to have dialogue. So any way you look at it, it creates momentum. Either that person leaves and you've got an amicable separation, or that person wants your help in having him correct some habits that are unhealthy for him.
Yeah, no, that's great. I appreciate that. Let's I want to take a slight pivot here and talk about biohacking, if you don't mind. I have you here, labeled as a part-time biohacker. So what what's kind of your, whether it's a daily biohack routine or things that you do weekly, just kind of what hacks are you using now, and yeah, let's just kind of open up that conversation.
So my biohacking has been a mixed bag, right? It's been a mixed bag of gastrointestinal type issues, fatigue, things that like taking shortcuts on stuff, right? Like, I'm a food scientist, so I have access to a lab all the time, and I can get just about any type of, compounds that I need to in the lab. And so I think probably up until the past year or so, I'd been focused on performance, and I'd been focused on probably brain function, because when I went into the ketogenic, adopting a ketogenic lifestyle, I would say at first my intention behind that was I want to lose these 35 pounds, get my blood pressure down, get some of these other health issues taken care of. But what I found is that was the side effect. The primary thing that I found in adopting a ketogenic lifestyle was brain function, right? Because when your brain shifts from glucose as a fuel to using burning ketones as a fuel, it's like somebody turns the lights on. You're like, it's not like caffeine because it's like drinking a couple of cups of coffee. No, it's like somebody literally turns the lights on in a room and you're like, whoa, this is what's going on. And that's the thing that really got me, fascinated with how keto works with brain function. And so, of course, I tried to throw some hacks like, have like taking ketone esters and seeing if I could up my ketosis, and then using a lot of like nootropics to see if I could just tweak that brain function a little bit more, using natural nootropics and then some pharmaceutical nootropics. And in the end, what I found is there's no shortcuts, right? There's no shortcuts. There's no path. There's hard work and there's discipline and there's eating well. And if you biohacking in that respect for me of like performance and brain function, I've moved past that. The new things that I'm looking at are longevity. So life extension, like how many more years can I get? How many more quality years? So with that, I work with a health practitioner here in Portland who is outstanding in that field. So we work on a few different types of modalities and some pharmaceutical options and stuff like that. And I would say it's a little early in the game to see well, I'm alive, so I guess that's one testimony, but we're still like gathering up data, taking blood tests and seeing what life extension really looks like.
Yeah. Are you a fasting guy? Like, do you practice either intermittent fasting or prolonged fasting at all?
Well, so you mean like the prolon, like the
either short intermittent on daily and okay.
So yeah, daily I practice the 16-8 intermittent fast, so 16 hours without food, 8 with food. I'm right on that edge right now where I'm getting ready to eat the keyboard. Yeah, so, and Prolon, I do Prolon. I try to do Prolon every other month, but I, have more often than not, I do Prolon every quarter. Big believer in Prolon, big believer in intermittent fasting, and also big believer in just fasting. Like, I think that, as far as longevity goes, that is the key. Like, if you want to live a longer, healthier life, eat less, and particularly go for a period of at least 48 hours. If you can do 72, even better, of fasting. That's the key. That's the key to longevity, because your body goes into a state of autophagy, which you start getting rid of all of these cells that are, no longer functioning at 100%. And yeah, the clarity that you get. So yeah, I mean, I'm a huge fan of fasting.
Yeah, it's beautiful, man. We had we had Dave Asprey on. I'm sure you're very familiar with.
Oh
with
yeah,
Dave's work, and I asked him this question. I'm like, what's the best biohack? And he's got light machines behind him, and he's sticking things up his nose and in his ears, and you wrapped around his neck, and all these things. I'm like, Dave, what's the best hack that you're doing? He's like, you want the truth? I was like, no, I don't want you to lie to me. Of course I want the truth. He's like, fasting. Fasting is the most effective biohack. So we did almost a 90 minute, conversation on just basically the topic of fasting. It's something I utilize it in a porn addiction recovery program. It's like, when I told the first person, like, I'm going to make you not eat food and this is going to help you with porn. Cause I think there's something to this building, like you understanding that willpower is an actual equation. Like, it's having the necessary energy to make the proper choice when faced with a difficult decision. And every time you eat, your body is utilizing energy to metabolize that food. So a lot of men struggle with late night urges, and it's due to lack of willpower, decision fatigue. They've made so many decisions throughout the day. And what am I going to eat for breakfast? What am I going to eat for lunch? Well, if you can learn to practice both long-term fasting, 48 hours early on in the program, but then also the intermittent stuff throughout the day. So you have to think about what I'm eating for lunch. Don't think about what I'm eating for breakfast. So when you're laying in bed late at night thinking about, oh, it'd feel really good to go look at porn, it's like you have something left in the reservoir tank to make a proper choice. So absolutely love that. And I love the way that you explained kind of the keto, turning like the lights on from the inside. Something I experienced myself when my introduction to keto came through the carnivore diet. It was a carnivore keto-ish, thing that I did back in January 2019. But it's like you said, I mean, it just turned everything on to a level that it had never been before. And it's like, oh, this is like my brain can operate at this level.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
Yeah. I know you said you're early in the game with, working with the doctor on some of the hacks. Is there anything that you guys are doing that you'd be open to sharing with us, or any practices there on the longevity side?
Yeah. I mean, metformin is one of them. Metformin has been researched to have some side effects of lengthening telomere, and which is your primary indicator of aging, and comboing that up with rapamycin. So those two things we're kind of working on. It's interesting threading the needle on that because, rapamycin is a pharmaceutical drug that that's used for rejection of organs. So somebody gets a heart transplant or liver transplant, and there's a possibility of them rejecting the organ. They've been using rapamycin for that, but rapamycin was actually was found, I think, in like Easter Island or something like that, like growing on mold. And there's these small single-celled creatures. I can't remember, something tards, gardatards or something. These small little creatures that were feasting on it, and they found that they live 30% longer. So another benefit of the combination of metformin and rapamycin is telomere length, which is that indicator of aging. So seeing how that works, getting it dialed in, is, because metformin can mess with your blood sugar a little bit. Can also give you a pretty pretty good GI effect. And then, you have to also be careful in regulating the rapamycin because, it can lower your resistance to some things. So it's just finding that combination. But that combination in, while using, Prolon and fasting, it seems to most definitely make a big shift in inflammation in the body, but it also just a feeling of youthfulness.
Got it. Yeah, that's great. We'll have to have you back on in a year or so, whenever you kind of gather some more of this data. I love the topic of longevity. I don't know if you have a goal of 180 like Asprey does, but he seems pretty confident.
I just listened to his podcast yesterday. I can't remember who was on it, but they were talking about life extension and 180. I don't. It
seems like a major reach for that, especially since a lot of the research is really showing 115, 120 is kind of that max. But we'll see.
And from my perspective, setting a lifespan goal, that's outside of your control. Like if you take good care of yourself and you use some of these hacks that Dave's using or a lot of his guests are using, I think it's likely you could get some more years out of it. But honestly, it's like lifespan has very little to do with, with what you do as much as the universe and the world around you. You could step outside and have something fall on you, or you could be somewhere and fall, or, like about 2 weeks ago, I decided to swim across a small stretch of the Columbia River and got about 3/4 of the way through. And the realization at that point, it's like, oh shit, I could drown. Like I feel like I'm starting to run out of gas and I'm going against the current. I could drown right now. And that was amazing. That stuck with me for like a few days, where you're just like, wow, the risks we take and the things that we do. And it's like, yeah, it's like, it's rich. It's like, enjoy every second of life you have, because you never know when it's going to be snapped up from you.
I want to talk about your condiments. First off, just amazing. We've had, like I said, we've had 86 episodes, and there's been two guests that send a pre-podcast package, and yours was just jammed. So I've really enjoyed. I think I've opened up 3 or 4 of them. The barbecue, the ketchup. I eat a lot of beef. I had a lot of ground beef, and just throwing a little bit of sugar-free ketchup on it is great. So the sauces are amazing. What inspired you to put your face on the label of ketchup and create the brand there? Just kind of what was the genesis of the condiment brand?
Well, I wrote the book, and while I was writing the book, I found that there was so many things I couldn't have. Like I couldn't have teriyaki sauce. I couldn't have. Almost every condiment you can think of is just loaded with sugar. Ice cream has more sugar. Ketchup has more sugar than ice cream. And so when you look at like how much sugar barbecue sauce has and how much sugar ketchup has, teriyaki sauce generally has as much sugar as a Snickers bar. So when you take a look at all that sugar, I couldn't have any of those. But I love teriyaki chicken. I love teriyaki sauce on salmon. One of my favorite things is salad rolls. Like a salad roll is pretty low carb and veggies and whatever you put in it, but it's the peanut sauce that comes with it, which is really amazing. I love peanut sauce, but so I have the Thai sweet chili sauce that if you just mix it with peanut butter, it's a way better sauce than you would get at any of these places, just because it doesn't have any sugar, but it tastes better. So I made those for myself. Like I selfishly made those so I could have them. And I shared them with people, and they're like, hey, you should bottle these up. And the book just came out, and I'm like, well, you know what? I'll just call them Guy Gone Keto. And
yeah, people asking for your autograph. You're this famous author now. You're like, I might as well just throw my face on a bottle as well. Everybody's going to want to see that too, right?
Yeah, what's interesting is what I love is that I will always stay the same age on that bottle.
Yeah.
So yeah, the condiments have done really well. And I mean, I use them all the time just because, I mean, they're keto friendly and safe.
Yeah, Tom, that's great. Well, I want to be obviously respectful for your time and all the listeners here. So try to bring it home here. We always have a question here at the end that we do like to ask, kind of a little bit different, off topic from really the conversation. But what's kind of what's kind of next for you and Icon and the Guy Gone Keto brand? Anything kind of big in the works right now that we can kind of tell people about, or what are you most excited about finishing up 2021 with?
Well, I bought a Sprinter van. And what I'm really excited about is getting out on the road and like at least spending a couple weeks and decompressing from all of the stuff that I'm doing, and then returning back and expanding, the Guy Gone Keto line some more and continuing to build Icon Foods.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. Yeah, I think we all are probably in need of some type of travel and kind of getting out of our mix with the what's happened in the last year and a half or so. So awesome, man. I see one thing on your on the profile side here on Icon is, are you a big
huge reader?
All right, yeah. So top books, Tom. What are top 3 to 5 books that be for business, entrepreneurship, mindset, obviously keto or biohacking?
Well, one of them is Lifespan, David Sinclair. But fantastic book, I'd say riveting. I'm a huge fan of Walter Isaacson. His book on Leonardo da Vinci was like amazing, but the one book that like for 2001 or 2021 that really got me was Walter Isaacson's book called Codebreaker, and it's the story of Jennifer Doudna, who her and her partner won the Nobel Prize for, I think, chemistry in their work with CRISPR, and discovering how to genetically modify cells, which led basically to the vaccines that we've got now. So it was Walter Isaacson. Just his biographies are amazing, like because they're filled with drama, so it keeps you locked in. But there's still so much science and so much depth to it. So I would say that was definitely Codebreaker was my favorite book for 2021.
Yeah, that's amazing. I love Isaacson's Jobs, the book on jobs that he wrote.
I haven't read that one. It's on my list to read, but his books are no joke. Like,
yeah,
they're a commitment.
You're signing up. Yeah, you're signing up for a couple months.
Yeah.
Anytime you get started with one of those. But yeah, like you said, I mean, just incredible blend of storytelling and drama, but the facts and the history and the lessons, and an amazing storyteller. Well, Tom, this has been absolutely amazing.
Thanks,
and I really appreciate you. Obviously everything that you're doing with Icon and the brand, and just providing healthy, viable options for people, and appreciate you coming on here and sharing your story and wisdom with the listener. So we have one final question here that we end every single episode, but before we do that, Tom, where can people connect with you? Where can they learn more about you, the brands, and if you're hanging out anywhere online, where's the best place for people to find you?
Any of the social medias, you can find me at Guy Gone Keto. You can find me on LinkedIn. LinkedIn's a good one if you want to DM me. I'm probably most responsive on that. Instagram, Twitter, just Guy Gone Keto. You can find me anywhere, everywhere.
Awesome. We'll appreciate that. And guys, we'll get all that information plugged down there. We'll link all the books that we mentioned here, and everything else always plugged down in the show notes, guys. But so Tom, obviously the title of the show is called The Superhuman Life. We've talked a little bit about it both before and throughout the conversation. What the work I'm doing today is a result of my own story, my own transformation. But when I talk about living a superhuman life, for me, it's really a belief, or the way that I try to go about how I live and how I operate. So how I would define it, I guess, it's the understanding that, we were, or the belief that we were all put on this earth for a very specific purpose. And it's our job, to find that purpose, but then do everything we can within this body. Like we were given a vessel, a tool to manifest it and bring that purpose to life. So that's what I really try to talk about. And that's kind of, I guess, my definition, I guess, for lack of a better word there. But I always like to get the guest takes. So Thom King, the guy gone keto, if you had to define it, how would you define living a superhuman life?
A constant and never-ending commitment to growth and kindness, and love towards other human beings.
So short, succinct, and very beautifully articulate. I appreciate it. I appreciate it, Thom. This has been absolutely amazing. For you guys out there, obviously, if you're interested in getting some healthy alternatives for your options, check out the brand at Guy Gone Keto. If you want to learn more about the work that they're doing over there, we'll link up the Icon Foods website. But if today's conversation was valuable and meaningful to you, you can always help us grow this mission, grow this show by one of two ways. Obviously, if you're watching on YouTube, make sure to hit that subscribe button, turn the notifications on so you're notified every Monday when the new episodes are released. And for everybody on the audio side, if you haven't done so yet, you can really help us in gaining more traction, gaining more listeners, and getting this in front of more people by leaving a rating and review, whether it's on Apple. But most importantly, if there's somebody in your life that needs to hear today's conversation, maybe they're going through some metabolic difficulties. Maybe they're going through some of the mindset challenges that we were talking about. And what we shared here today could really help us. Do us a favor of sharing this conversation. But for Thom King, Frank Rich, we love you guys, and we will see you next week.